Good morning, third grade.
Good morning.
I am so excited to be here. I've had the opportunity to visit with your teacher a couple of times so that I can kind of figure out what you've been doing with your nonfiction reading and the kinds of things that you are working on. And so I know we're going to have a good day together. I want to tell you a little story about some students I was working with last week, and they were reading nonfiction, and two partners were getting together and they were kind of trying to share about their books with each other. And George and Gretchen were their names, and George was talking about, he wanted to share his book first. And so Gretchen was asking him, you know, what's your book teaching you? What are you learning about? And he said, well, I have learned that Siamese cats have two heads. He said, I knew that was the case, but I couldn't figure out how it was going to happen, but my book taught me that. And his partner kind of looked at him, kind of the way some of you guys just looked at me and said, show me where your book taught you that. And he said, well, sometimes you don't learn it in the words. Sometimes you learn it in the pictures. And so I brought the page with me because if you don't see the picture, it won't make any sense. But he said, I already kind of knew because my mom and I had gone to a museum about the human body. He said, and I saw pictures of Siamese twins, which are people, right? These are people who are born and their bodies are conjoined. So they're twins and their bodies are really one because they are born together. And so it looks as if it's one body and two heads. And maybe you've even heard of some of those surgeries where they separate them successfully. And so it really is two people, but something happens when they're born. And so he knew that Siamese twins had two heads. And so he said Siamese cats do too. And he said this picture right here showed me. He said if you look really closely, this tiger cat right here has a head at each end of its body. And so his partner looked and they looked together and finally they figured out that actually there's a body for each one of those cats. They're just all in a big pile. And it kind of looks like there's another head on that cat, right? It kind of does if you just glance, doesn't it? And so then George was kind of confused and he said, well then what does Siamese have to do with it? And so they talked a little bit that a Siamese cat is just a type of cat, just like a poodle is a type of dog, right? Or a beagle is a type of dog, a Siamese cat or a minx cat. Those are all types of cats, right? And so you know what then George said? He said, well, that connection didn't help me at all, right? Knowing about Siamese twins did not help me figure out about Siamese cats. And that's true, isn't it? So sometimes we have to do a little more exploring when we're doing informational text because we have to make sure we don't want to just jump to conclusions, right? Because even when I said that out loud, all of you went, like, I don't think that's right. And that's what his partner said too. Show me where you learned that. So they worked together and they figured it out, right? Well, today I want to teach you that when you are reading nonfiction and you know you're going to have a conversation with someone, can you put your hand down for right now? You're going to read differently. Because you want to gather up those ideas. You really want to have conversations almost in your head so that when it's time to have conversation with that partner, you're ready. George was ready, wasn't he? He knew his important point, his interesting fact that he wanted to share, and he was ready to talk about it. He could even take you and show you the evidence in the text that backed it up, right? But he and his partner could work through it together and figure out what was accurate. So today we want to learn that when we're going to have conversations with someone after we read, we get ready for those conversations while we're reading, okay? So I want to kind of show you, I want you to think about something. Are you all sitting next to your partners?
Yeah.
Perfect. I'm so glad. I meant to ask that before you sat down. So I want you to think what I didn't have you do, and I'm probably going to have their nonfiction books in their hands, and I didn't think about that ahead of time. Do you have books that you read some from last night that were nonfiction?
No.
Yeah? Or that you read from yesterday that were nonfiction? All right, let's do this. Where are those books located? Since I forgot to, on your desks. Here's what we're going to do. Can you listen carefully? Let's have everybody from here over quietly and quickly grab your book and come right back to the carpet. Just a minute. If the rest of you, when I tell you, can do it as well as they've just done it, we're set. All right, so exactly like that. Let's have these middle two, well, you guys stay. These middle two rows right here, quietly and quickly. Grab your books and come on back.
Excuse me, Miss Arens. Mia, the girl in the lavender long sleeve shirt, she doesn't have her partner because her partner's sick.
Okay, we'll figure that out.
So,
thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and there's a group of 3, so.
Okay, that'll work.
Somebody from there could help her out.
That'll work. All right, and last two rows, quietly and quickly grab your books. Thank you very much. All right, so what I want you to do right now is I want you to look at your piece of text, and I want you to find a place where you think there is an interesting point. Maybe it's a place where you used a whoa kind of thing. Maybe you put a post-it note on it, maybe you marked it. It doesn't matter if you have a post-it note there or not. But I want you to find one place where you found an interesting or an important point in your book and put your finger on it. So if you can find that quickly, find a spot in your book. Okay, and just put your finger on that spot in your book so I know you're ready. I think just about everybody's there. Get your finger on that spot. You can just hold your finger there and then keep looking up here at me. Because before you do something with that, here in just a minute, you're going to work with your partner, and one of you is going to be the person who thinks out loud, and the other person is going to be the person that listens. So right now, decide quickly in your partnership who's going to think out loud. Yeah. All right, now you know who's going to think out loud. You don't need to move, or you need to find a partner. That's great. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. So everybody knows who's going to think out loud, but you need to still be facing me. All right. Eyes and ears this way. Eyes and ears this way. Before you do this work with your partner, I want to show you something that we can do. Sometimes when we have that important point in our head, we sometimes use some talking points, some thoughts that will help us extend our thinking. And so I'm thinking about what we've been learning a little bit about an octopus, right, with the article that we've read and so forth. And so I have that important point in my head. And what I'm going to ask is I'm going to ask one of you to maybe call out one of these responses that I can use to think further about my important point about octopuses. So I just want to make sure that we have seen this chart, so I brought it with me. So it might be something like, I can picture how this goes. The weird thing about this is, this makes me think about, or, but I wonder, it's important to notice that this reminds me of, I used to think this, but now I'm realizing this. So any one of those sentence beginnings can help me think deeper. So my important point about an octopus that I want to use is, color changes show how an octopus is feeling. I think that's very interesting, that the color changes they make show how an octopus is feeling. Would you tell me which prompt you want me to use?
It is important to notice that.
Okay, it's important to notice that because that's new information for me. And I think about chameleons changing color, but I never thought about an octopus changing color before, and that it's doing that because of the way it's feeling. Tell me another one you want me to use. I used to think that an octopus stayed the same color all the time. Maybe they were different colors, but they stayed the same color all the time. But now I'm realizing that their emotions make them change color. Give me one more.
The weird thing about this is...
The weird thing about this is I never knew it happened, and I wonder what it actually looks like. I'd love to see a picture of it happening to an octopus. Now, do you see how those sentence prompts help me think deeper about my interesting point? Mm-hmm. All right, do you think you could try it now?
Yeah.
This is how it's going to go, all right? I'm going to have the person who decided they were going to be the one that thinks out loud is going to share their interesting point from their book with their partner. And once I've heard you do that, I'm going to give you one of these prompts, and you're going to use it to talk further about your interesting point. And then I'm probably going to give you another prompt, and you're going to keep talking. Do you think you're ready to try that? Yeah. So what I need you to do right now is turn to your partner and tell them your interesting point. All right, so now you're going to repeat after me, and you're going to say, I can picture how this goes.
I can picture how this goes.
Tell your partner. There you go. And now you're going to use, but I wonder. This reminds me of.
Last year I did it on my own little comic.
All right, eyes and ears up here. What do you think about that? Did that help you think a little deeper about those interesting points in your book?
Yes.
Did that help you get some new ideas from the important point that you picked out in your nonfiction text?
Yes.
I was very impressed with the things that I could hear partners saying to each other. So what we want to remember is that when we're reading nonfiction text, we need to have those thoughts while we're reading. So if you're not sitting with your partner and talking to them about your book, you might use some of these prompts in your own head to have kind of an ongoing conversation with yourself inside, right? So you're thinking through as you read something in your book and you go, oh, I didn't realize that. I used to think such and such, right? Or you think to yourself, oh, I can picture that. Does that remind you of visualization when you say, I can picture that? What about this reminds me of? Isn't that making a connection? Yeah. So some of these prompts just help us clarify some of those strategies we already know how to use, don't they? All right. So here's what I want you to remember today. All right. As you go off to read, I want you to use everything you already know about reading nonfiction text. So if some of you are starting a brand new book, you might think back to some of the things that you've learned on your places to stop, think, talk, and jot, right? You might even think about how you were doing some boxes and bullets. Maybe if it's a brand new book, you want to read your headings and subheadings and kind of think about what's this book going to be about? What am I going to be learning, right? If you're still in the middle of your nonfiction text during reading time, you might be thinking about some of these. And I actually have a lot of stuff down here. I actually have ones, a size that you can use, and I'll put those out. You want to be sure and pick one of these up because you may be needing this for homework, all right, or for another day when you're doing some more nonfiction reading. So do you think you can do all of those things?
Yeah.
This is a tool that we're not just going to use today, right? This is a tool that we can remember to use every time we're reading nonfiction text. Is that true?
Yeah.
All right, will you quietly and quickly find your reading spots and get busy with your reading? Yes.
So you know how there's glossaries in most nonfiction books?
I do.
So I was reading a fiction book with French words, and there was a glossary.
And there was a
French
glossary there.
words.
So a glossary can help us no matter what, right? Because it just helps us understand unknown words.
Yes.
That's great. I'm so glad you noticed that. I asked the two of you to do me a favor. I'm waiting until everybody gets in their spot so I can see where everybody is, because it looks like we have lots of people on the carpet back here. Find the best place. We'll figure something out. All right. I'm going to just go ahead and deliver these while you guys are reading, so I know everybody has one, okay? Since you're not at your tables anymore. You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Did I give you one? I think I missed you. There you go. I'm trying to decide where I can pull them so he can see. We'll just sit right there. I'm going to have you point to me where they are sitting. Where are these two sitting?
This is Colby, and Maddie's in the braids.
Okay. Maddie, I'm going to ask you and Colby to do some work with me. Can you just turn right around? I'm going to have you sit in one of these two chairs right here, and I'm going to be right here with you. Can you just have a seat right here? Hey, Colby, can you bring your stuff with you? And we're going to have a conversation right over here with Maddie. You can bring these things with you too, okay? Your notebook. You want to grab your notebook and your book, Maddie? Just come have a seat right here. You bring your book too and your pencil. Come on over and have a seat right there. So I wanted to visit with you guys today because I think your teacher and I were visiting, and she was telling me how good you guys are at remembering things from what you've read, that you can tell those facts from what you've read, but that maybe trying to organize those facts is a little bit harder, like when you're doing the boxes and bullets, right? So we want to try to do some things together today to try to help us get better at that organizing part. Would that be all right? Okay, so I thought before we look at your books, let's try this. I want to think about, now, I'm new to your school, okay, but you don't have to write anything down yet. I spent yesterday here in your building, and I was here the day before, and here are some of the things some facts I know about your school, all right? I saw that you have an auditorium. Is that true? I saw some slides on the playground. Yeah? You have reading time here in your classroom. Yeah? Tell me something else about the school that I haven't thought of yet. Give me one thing, Maddie. Is there a cafeteria?
Yeah.
I thought I saw a cafeteria. Tell me one other thing, Colby. What's something you learn here in the classroom? Do you learn math? Okay, so are those all facts about the school? Those are all facts, right? But could we kind of group some of those facts together a little bit better? Could we organize them and put them into categories? Do you think we could? I thought it might be easier if some of those facts were written down, so I wrote them down ahead of time. Is that all right? So I wrote down there's an auditorium, okay? And I also put down something about there being monkey bars on the playground, right? And that we have writing time in the classroom, and that there are slides on the playground, right? And we have reading time, and we have math time, and there's a gymnasium here. Do you agree with all of those things? Those are all facts about our school, aren't they? Can you guys find a way that we could maybe organize those facts? Do you see some things that would go together that are kind of about a certain part? Tell me some things you think would go together.
These two.
Oh, you think those two go together? So you think we learn math and we have writing go together? Okay. Why do you think those go together?
Because we do them both in the classroom.
Oh, do you see anything else in our list that you do in the classroom? You do? Which one? In the classroom. Those two go together? You hold on to those two. What's another one that goes? Okay, put it over there, Maddie. So if we were thinking boxes and bullets, these would be our bullets, right? What would our box be? What would our subheading be up here? You just told me. What are all of these things?
Things we do in the classroom.
So that could be our heading, things we do in the classroom. And you've got, we learn math, there's reading time, we have writing, right? You just told me that you think those go together. Why?
Because they're both on the playground.
So these would be our bullets. What would our box be?
Things we can do on the playground.
Things we can do on the playground. Could you add another bullet to that? What's something else you can do on the playground?
Go on the swing.
Go on the swing. So we could even have another bullet there. Do you think these two things go together at all?
No.
Yeah.
You don't think so, but you think they do. Why do you think they go together?
Because we can.
There's an auditorium, we have a gym. How could those go together?
We're both in the school.
So you do think they go together. So we could talk about all the different kinds of rooms that the school has. Do you guys see how well you organize that information? That's exactly what boxes and bullets do, right? These are our bullets. You guys came up with the boxes, right? So now I want you to try doing that with your work as well. So let's flip to where you are in your reading right now. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing in your reading, right? So this is one that you're working on right here. This is where you've started. So you have what is a polar bear as your box, and you've got some bullets. What do you think could be the next box that you might work on, Colby? You have to probably look back at your book, and that's fine. You can take some time to do that, to look back at your book and think about it. What about you? Have you started a boxes and bullets on your panda yet?
No.
You haven't. So let's flip back to the beginning then, Maddie, and let's see what we think could be maybe the very first category of ideas. What are some of the things that you learn about at the beginning of this book? What's it talking about on this page?
There's a giant panda.
There's a giant panda. What else is it telling you about on that page?
It makes of bamboo.
There's bamboo. I also see another word that talks about mountaintops. Is it kind of telling you about where pandas live? Is it? Is there more information about where pandas live coming up? There is. Could that possibly be your first box? What would you write in that box? I saw you start to say it. Say it out loud. What did we decide these pages are telling us about?
Where pandas live.
Oh my goodness. Will you write that down? Let's put that in a box and we're going to come up with some bullets. What are you thinking could be your next box, Colby?
What people can call it. Oh, there's like for the main idea.
The main idea you think is what
I
people...
don't think that would go with it.
You don't think that goes with it. Okay, so I'm guessing that all of these things go with this, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
So what comes after this information? What's kind of next in your... You're welcome. What's kind of next in your piece? What do you learn about? Do you think that's kind of the next main idea? I bet it is. That's why it's a subheading, right? So let's put that in your box and then we'll come up with some bullets, okay? So your next box...
This is my main idea for all those.
For all of those? Or this is, you wanted to put your main idea here? I thought this was your main idea.
Well, this was the name of the chapter that I'm putting all this stuff in.
But you don't think that really describes the main idea? Could the main idea of this be where polar bears live? The next part? I think it is. Do all of these things describe what a polar bear is? Mm-hmm. So I think this is your main idea right here. So let's go with this as your next main idea, and then let's come up with some bullets to go under it. Okay? So you write that down. Where pandas live. What bullets can you come up with, Maddie? Okay. What bullets can you come up with? Look back in your book and see what kinds of things you noticed. What did it tell us about where they live?
They live in China.
They live in China. Let's make that a bullet. Let's flip back to that first page because it told us some more things about where they live. What did it tell us about their environment and where they live on that page?
Mountaintops.
Mountaintops. So maybe they live near the mountains. Do you think that's true? It looks like it, doesn't it? All right, so before we write any of our bullets about polar bears, I want you to kind of read through this next section of your book and see what kind, because we don't want to end up with too many bullets, right? But we want enough bullets. So kind of read through there and see what kinds of things you could tell me about where polar bears live.
There's only like 3 pages.
Yeah, there's only like 3 pages. So just kind of read through that quickly and we'll talk. Is there anything else that it tells us about where they live?
Forest.
Okay, what kind of forest? Because there's something pretty important about that forest. What kind of forest?
A bamboo forest.
And why do they need to live in a bamboo forest? Do you know?
They eat bamboo.
They do. So could we put in there, live in bamboo forests? I think that would be awesome. All right, so if you're looking just specifically for things that tell us about where polar bears live, what's a bullet you think you could put in there?
Polar bears live in the Arctic.
The Arctic, right? So that's a kind of a big broad thing for us to know, that they live in the Arctic. Let's write that down. That's a good bullet. Maddie, do you think you could read a little bit more and see if you can find another box and some bullets to go? Head on back to your seat and see if you can try that, okay? Nice work today. All right, let's get at least one more bullet written down. So we know they live in the Arctic, but what else is it telling us about where they live?
They live near the shore of the Arctic.
They live near the shore. Does it kind of tell you why? That's the very next sentence, so we're not sure we want to say that yet.
Can I please go to the bathroom?
Why is it telling you that? What do you think? I see the word coast here, so that must be something pretty important, right?
Between 3,000 and 4,000 polar bears live along the northern coast of Alaska.
Okay, so what are you getting from why they live near the coast? Do you know enough about polar bears yet to think about why they live near the coast? Why?
So they can get their fish to
Yes, so that's pretty important, isn't it? They live in the Arctic, but we also know it talks about the shore, it talks about the coast. So do you think that's an important bullet to know about polar bears? They live in the Arctic, but they live near the coast in the Arctic, because aren't there places in the Arctic that aren't close to the ocean? There are. So I think that would be a great bullet. All right, write that down. Live near the coast or near the shore, however you want to say it. I want you to keep reading that section, and I want you to come up with no more than one or maybe two more bullets. And I want you to think about what's important for us to know about where polar bears live and kind of why they live there, right? So we know that this is important because we know they need to be able to get to the fish, right? Thinking about what's coming next in the text, what do you think, what's something else you think you might want to put down as a bullet?
Polar bears are found along the coast of Norway.
All right. So what I'm seeing, kind of like what you're seeing, is that this next part names lots of different countries that polar bears live in, right? And there are lots of them listed, aren't there? Okay. So you need to decide, is it important to know every one of those countries? Or is it important to know that they are found in lots of countries that are in the Arctic? You decide how that bullet could be named. Do you see what I'm saying? Because we could list Alaska, which is part of the United States, right? Canada's another country, Norway's another country, Greenland is another country, Siberia is another country. We could list all of those. Or you can decide if you want to say they live in lots of countries. You decide how you want to put that bullet, okay? Do you think that those will be the only bullets that you need if your main idea is where do polar bears live, or places polar bears live? You could even change that if you don't want it to be a question. Do you think that's enough information from what you've read here? I do too. Even though there's more information, some of this goes into how they camouflage themselves, doesn't it? And that might be a different main idea, right? You think you can keep trying? Head on back to your seat. Thanks for sharing with me today, Colby. bring your notebook and your reading and come up here and share with me? I'm just going to have you sit right here. What's Grace working on? What are you working on today, hon?
I'm just working on this like I did yesterday.
And what book is it? Because I don't know since I haven't talked to you.
Colonial Times.
All right, so when you're gathering your Post-its, what kinds of things are you putting on your Post-its?
I have a lot of connections and questions.
Okay.
Because that's the stuff I really do all the time.
Okay, connections and
sometimes,
questions.
yeah, and that's just the things that help me.
Okay, all right, so if I were going to sit down and kind of thinking about the conversation that I had with you all.
Those answers.
Oh. So
There
if
was
it's
one
a
that
question.
was lost. It was about the colonial days.
Okay, so maybe it came off.
What the colonial days meant.
So this was your question that you were wondering, and then if you found the answer, you wrote it
Yeah.
underneath. I like the way you're doing it. It's helping you kind of organize your thoughts, isn't it? So if I were to ask you, kind of like the two students that I was telling you the story about, George and Gretchen, if you remember them,
Yeah.
if I said to you, what are the things that you are learning about colonial times? Could you just kind of quickly tell me some things that you're learning? Tell me one important point that you think you've learned.
Well, it was a couple days ago,
That's fine.
but the punishments are like so weird. And I want to show you something. And well, one of the most important things about that is that a female woman couldn't talk back to her husband.
She couldn't, and so
And
that
it's back here.
And
And they
you
had
can-
to go to church twice a day.
twice a day. That took a
Yes.
lot of their time, right?
It did.
So let's go back to that
See?
point that you just shared with me, okay?
Point.
So you were talking about the punishments,
Yeah.
right? So here's what I want to do. I want us to use one of those thought prompts that we were using earlier. So the punishments were really weird.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, you use that sentence and share with me what you're thinking. What does it make you wonder about when you think about those punishments?
I don't really know.
Well, why did that stand out to you? Because I think there's a reason that you went, why are there punishments like that?
I just don't know because that
Yes.
and this and this.
So why does that seem strange to you? Do we see things like that happening now?
We don't.
We don't.
Oh yeah. This makes me wonder why we don't have stuff like this going on now.
Yeah, and you know what makes me wonder? It makes me wonder, why did they think it was okay to do it back then?
I know.
Right?
Crazy.
It is crazy.
You have red
Right.
marker on your finger.
I do, because I messed up when I was making my chart. All right, so let's look at one more. I noticed that you have a Post-it about the punishments, right?
Yes, I
Okay, so
do.
that was already one of your important thoughts. Have you seen anything new today that was kind of a whoa kind of thinking today as you were reading?
That there was town criers all the way back then, and my dad said, and this is a book about all the way from 1565 to 1776, and he said they were in the 1800s too.
Oh my goodness. So why did
Just those.
so why did the town crier stand out to you?
I don't know because read this.
Well, let's see. You read it to me.
This reminds me of when my dad calls me the town crier because I tell everybody everything wherever I go.
So you have a connection.
Yeah.
All right, I like it a lot, Grace. All right, so here's what I want to tell you. What I like is that you're reading a pretty thick book. There's a lot of information in here
I
about
know.
colonial days.
53
right?
chapters.
Oh my goodness. But what I do notice is that I don't think you're writing down too many things, because you could write a lot more, and you don't need to, because we're just trying to pick out those things that really stand out to us. So I think you're doing a very nice job of picking out just those most important things that stand out to you. Okay?
Because I only have like 8 things on here.
Okay, so could I teach you something or give you a tip right now for what I want you to do today? So as you're reading today, I want you to think about what we did in our mini lesson where we were using some of those thought prompts.
Oh, yeah.
And when you start to write something down, write it down, and then look at those thought prompts and go, I can picture that. And then talk to yourself in your head about how you can picture that happening, or choose one of the other ones. I used to think this, but now I think that, because I think you've got some really nice thoughts here. All I want you to do is to extend your thinking, make it go a little bit further, so that you can think about if you were going to talk to someone about your book, You don't want to just say, read my Post-its. You want to be able to share your thoughts like you just did when you talked to me about the town crier.
I want
think
to
you
tell
can do
you
that?
something.
One thing, and then I have to talk to somebody else.
Okay, so I have this turtle book because I have my pet Shelly. She's my new tortoise.
I heard you
hashtag
talking about her
obsessed.
earlier.
Yeah. So,
Mm-hmm.
anyways, yeah, I was reading a book from the library about
Yes.
how to care for tortoises.
Yes.
And then I thought, well, I thought that tortoises used to live in water, not on land. Now I realize that they live on land.
So you used to think that,
Yeah.
but now you think this. I love how you just shared that with me, and you used one of those prompts to do it. You can head on back to your seat, Grace. Thanks so much for sharing with me today.
You're welcome.
Jacoby's on the phone. Jacoby, would you bring your things and come on over with me, please? What, babe? You might. We'll just bring it just in case. How's Jacoby today? Good. Jacoby, what have you been working on?
I've been working on charm
Okay. Why do you think you chose that?
because I love sharks.
Okay, so you have a real motivation to read this book, don't you? So I see you've jotted some things down. What makes you decide to jot some things down? Can you tell me a little bit about your notes?
And well, I decided to do this because I found some super interesting facts.
You did? Would you share one of them with me?
My first one was, wow, sharks have pointy scales. Because it says it right here. Sharks don't have smooth scales like most fish. Instead, they have many sharp pointy scales.
All right. Does it say anything about why they have those sharp, pointy scales?
They point the face back towards the tail to help the water. They help the water flow over the shark's body without slowing it down.
Can you kind of picture that?
Yeah.
Tell me, we're going to use that thought prompt that says, I can picture that. Tell me what you kind of see in your head as you're thinking about those shark's scales. Because you're thinking about them being pointy, but they don't slow the shark down. So what are you thinking in your head? What might that look like?
I don't know.
Not sure?
No.
Let's look at the picture that they have on the page. Because there was a picture there of just a few individual scales, right? I think it's a little further back. Right here. Do you think those are individual scales from a shark?
Yeah.
I think they might be too. Looks like maybe they are,
Yeah.
right? And so it says that they face back toward the tail, right? Can I tell you what it makes me think about? So it makes me think that if I had a shark here and I rubbed its skin and I went from its nose to its tail, that it would feel smooth.
Yeah.
But I think if I rubbed this way, I'm picturing myself rubbing this way, what do you think would happen if I did that?
You'll get hurt.
I might even get hurt. It might cut me or at least hurt because it's sharp and pointy. Do you think that?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I picture what this is talking about, that if I went this way, I might not even notice that the shark had sharp pointy scales, but that if I went this way, that, yeah, I think I would too. I think I would too. Jacoby, tell me something else that you've noticed about this book that you think is helping you learn about sharks.
this one helped me about sharks. I'm like, what? Sharks can swim when they are asleep, when they're asleep?
They can?
Yeah.
I say the same thing. What?
And
Sharks can sleep when they're asleep?
And
Can
this,
swim when they're asleep?
and this is another one. I'm like, whoa. If sharks stop swimming, they will stop breathing. It says it in the book. It says
Oh,
it.
well, show me.
I think so. If sharks stop swimming, swimming and breathing go together. If sharks stop swimming, they will stop breathing and they'll die.
You know what? What you just read to me makes so much sense about your other thing that you shared with me, because we were both kind of wondering, how can a shark swim while it's asleep, right? But now we know they have to, don't we? If they didn't swim while they were asleep, what would happen?
They would die.
They would die. All right, Jacoby, you've done a nice job of sharing some important thoughts with me, writing them down, and even going a little deeper with your thinking. Could I teach you something else that I might like for you to try?
Yeah.
Okay. I think something that might help you, might help me, might help your teacher when she's looking at your thoughts and your notes, is if you would separate your notes a little bit. And here's what I mean. Do you know how you guys have been doing boxes and bullets?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you do that and you have a box and then you have bullets, each one of those is separate. Okay? What I notice about your paper, and this might not be boxes and bullets, these might just be your important thoughts, but do you see how they all just kind of run together? Now that you've read them to me, I see, I'm going to use your pencil instead of my purple pen, I see that this is the beginning of a thought because you said, whoa, right? And this is the beginning of a thought because you said, what? Right? And here's the beginning of another thought because you said, whoa, right? Here's what I want you to do today. If you come across another one of those that makes you just stop and think, oh my goodness,
I'm
right?
already in the 3rd chapter.
Good for you. So if you have one of those today, here's what I want you to do. On your paper, I want you to skip some space. I want you to write that what or that whoa or oh my goodness, whatever you write. Okay, and maybe even put a box around it like this, or maybe even put it on a Post-it note, however you want to do it, and then write your notes next to it, and then skip some space before you do the next one, because then we can look at this and go, look at all these different thoughts that Jacoby has had, whereas right now it looks like it's just all kind of
And sharks have
mushed
no
together.
bones.
They have no bone. So tell me another thing you think you might like to write down today.
Well, I want to write down some stuff about the teeth.
Okay.
'Cause I'm on the 3rd chapter.
So what would be the first thing you'd write? Would you put one of these words to kind of say,
Yeah.
what would you put?
Yeah. I'd probably do whoa.
Okay, so I want you to skip a couple of lines and I want you to write it right here. Go ahead and do it right now with me. I want to see you do that. So put whoa right down here, okay? You can look back to see how you wrote that before, up here. All right, so let's write that word right here. We're going to skip a couple of lines.
Right here?
Right where my finger is.
I like doing cursive. I do it the line under.
Okay,
For,
okay. So what is it you're going to write?
the shark. I'm like,
You're
whoa.
going to write something about their teeth, I thought, right?
Oh,
I see something about their teeth. What do you see on that page that you might want to tell me about? What's a whoa on that page? I see something pretty incredible. Read this sentence to me.
some have hundreds, a few have thousands.
What are those two sentences talking about?
How many teeth they have?
Some sharks have hundreds of teeth and some sharks have thousands of teeth. Is that a whoa kind of thing? How could you write that in your words?
Well, I usually copy it down from.
Because that's a fact. All right, so do you think you're going to write both of those facts or just one of them?
I might combine them.
Combine them? I think that's a great idea. I want you to go back to your seat and do that. And when you finish writing that fact, you know that you're going to skip a couple of lines before you write your next one, right? So that we can keep all of your thinking clear on your paper. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
I think you can do it. Thanks for sharing with me today, Jacoby. You can head on back to your
Seat
seat.
on my reading spot.
Back at your reading spot. Back at your reading spot. Are you Alexis? Alexis, would you bring your things and come on with me? We're going to talk for just a minute, okay? Because we don't have much time left. Third grade, you have 2 more minutes of reading time. 2 more minutes. How's Alexis today? What are you reading about? What am I going to learn from you?
I'm reading The Who Lived 100 Years Ago.
Are you finding it interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I've done...
okay, so you've got a lot of fun. Now, here's what I'm noticing about what you've changed. You have lots and lots of bullets under these boxes, don't you? But when I see you flip over here, and lots of bullets here, when I see you flip over here, this looks a little different, right? Why does it look a little different now?
Because it's like the Y and it's crazy. This is more of like both of those.
Are these...
This is how it looked.
Okay, this kind of reminds me of what we did today with our thought prompts, right? I can picture this happening. This is how it looked. So it looks to me like you're able to be a little bit more concise with these thoughts. But boxes and bullets are pretty intense because there's so much information in the book. So sometimes we want to think about how we can combine some of that. This looks like a nice way to combine some of that thinking, right? I want you to share one thing with me that you think is just a really important thing you've learned from this book. Can you even think just from your head something that you remember from the book?
That like the smells and most other things were different, like
The what were different? The smells
and,
were different.
Like what you did.
Okay, why do you think, I'm kind of wondering about that. Why do you think maybe the smells were different?
Because there are different things around at that time. Like instead of cars, there were horses to drive around, and
That would have a different smell, wouldn't it? What else?
instead of like regular stoves, there'd probably be not like more like gas stoves.
Okay, all right, or even wood burning. So those would also make a difference, right? What else would affect the smells? I hadn't even thought about the smells being different. Can you think
More
of anything?
leather.
Oh, that definitely has an aroma, doesn't it? All right, so what I really like about what you just did, we gather lots of notes, we write things down because that helps us remember, but sometimes we want to talk just from what we remember right up here, right? And you did a nice job of that, and I think the writing down that you've done helped you do that even better, okay? So let's flip back to this. Is this the part you're working on today?
Yeah, and this.
And so you've
what
got
I
some
was
more.
doing right now.
So you're kind of doing those categories on whatever section you're reading that day? Okay, do you feel like that's helping you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because then I can like put a post-it there if I'm thinking about that, then I put a post-it there in the different spots that I really want to think about.
All right, I like the way you're organizing your work. It's time for us to stop today, but I appreciate you sharing with me, all right? I think this is a good way for you to organize your work because I think, back here you had so many bullets that this will help you kind of keep it a little more concise, okay? Nice job. Thank you, Alexis. All right, third grade, will you please find a good stopping point in your reading and then join me back on the rug, on your spot on the rug. Come on back to the rug. Find your spot. Just a couple of minutes to wrap things up. Oh, excuse me, hon. Go ahead. Can you get through there? I'll put this chair back. Either way, actually, you can take your things with you if you want, because you're going to be talking to your partner about what you read. So I should have told you can bring your things with you. If you can remember from what you read today, then you won't have to have them. But if you want to have your book, you may. Make sure you're sitting next to your reading partner. So sit in your reading spots. So this morning, just like when I shared with you about the partners that I had in another room, George and Gretchen, and how they really learned together because they were having that conversation about their book. Anytime we get a chance to talk to someone else, and today that chance is going to be to talk to your reading partner, it helps us even learn a little bit more. I was glad to get to share with a few of you back at the seats during conferencing time because it helped me learn about the books you're reading and helped you think even deeper. So we want to think about these things, right? The person who was the person that did the thinking out loud this morning, you're going to be the one that listens right now. So the other partner is going to think out loud, something that you read about today. Share an important thing that you read and do one of these ideas of how to go a little bit deeper. So turn to your partner, share something important, and then go a little bit deeper with one of these thought prompts.
Wow. Wow, so I'm looking for one too. Where are leopards located? It's important.
Kubla Khan. That's a funny name, isn't it?
How much more big cats are there? And my next one, how much more big cats? 100 or even 1,000.
All right, would you stop? I want the other partner to get a chance to share quickly so the other partner can share an important thought and go a little bit deeper with one of these responses. Okay, the other partner gets to share. So take that idea, Maddie, that you just shared and go a little deeper. Maybe it's important to notice that. What would be important to notice about that? And that they live in China and in bamboo forests because, what did you tell me earlier? Why do they live in bamboo forests? Because they eat bamboo, right? So that's an important thing to know about them, isn't it? Thank you. Third grade. Third grade. Nice job today. Thank you all so much for being such deep readers, for gathering your thoughts in your notebook, and being ready to talk to someone else about what you learned. Because when we're learning things, if we read it, and then we write about it, and then we teach it to someone else, we remember it even better. If you do just one of those things, you don't remember it nearly as well as if you do all of those things. So I love the way that you guys are taking that time to stop and jot something down and think about it and talk to someone else about it, because that's the best way to learn from our nonfiction reading. All right? I'm going to have you guys stay right here and you can let them know where they need to go next, and I'm going to scoot out to go where I need to go next. Thank you guys so much for sharing with me today. All right?
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for coming.
You are welcome. You are welcome. It was my pleasure.
Oh, I'm so. Okay, so